ability to deal with riding events can be helped by carrying out some basic checks every time you ride. Check out your bike before you even get onto it. This 30-second check can save you heaps and keep you alive. Look for any obvious damage. Are there any oil or fluid leaks on the ground? Look at tyres. Do a visual check to make sure they look okay, that they're inflated and there's no obvious signs of damage like cuts, nails or cracks. If you've got a chain, check the tension. Mount the bike and check your indicators, right and left. Check your stoplight, apply both the front brake and the rear. Test brakes. Check the front brake to make sure it's working, and then move the bike forward and apply the rear brake. It's important that once a week at least you do a more thorough check. For instance, because tyres are critical for bike safety, tyre tread and pressure must be checked regularly. And if you're riding a bike with a chain, make sure the chain is lubricated, properly adjusted and not worn. Your owner's manual will show you exactly what should be checked on your bike. Also explain any technological features your bike might have, such as special suspension systems, anti-lock or integrated brakes and traction control. Talk to your bike dealer if you're unsure about any of these features so you can maximise the safety benefit they provide.
One of the most important things is being able to understand the motorcycle that you're on and what it's capable of.
It may not be unusual to drive someone else's motor car, but there are much greater differences between bikes than between cars. Research shows that riders in crashes were often riding a motorcycle that they didn't own and weren't familiar with. So it's not a good idea to lend your bike to a mate or borrow someone else's. Let's go now to body checks. By law, every rider and pillion passenger must wear an Australian Standards approved helmet. It should fit properly and be securely fastened. The foam on the inside compacts down over time and with wear. Depending on how much use you put it to, a helmet could last between 1 and 5 years. Frayed chin straps and worn and torn lining are indicators of age. Helmets are designed to absorb only one impact, so throw it away after it's done its job. And it's not recommended to buy a second-hand helmet.
Got up the inside and into the lead. This is a huge ride from John Chiodo. He'll be super pleased with his position. We've got a problem. He's gone down. Oh, no. Can we this, Dennis? John Chiodo, a big crash. Let's have a look at what happened to him. The bike has gone sideways out of turn 2.
Don't try this in T-shirt and shorts. Riding gear doesn't prevent injury, but it greatly reduces it.
And John Chiodo has had a big crash here at Phillip Island. Oh, good news, John's up. I don't think he's too happy at the moment. He'll be wondering just what's happened.
Wearing good gear has benefits, but it comes at a cost. Gear that's specifically designed for motorcycle riding is the best type of gear to get. You'll need a good jacket, one that helps protect you from injury, helps you be seen, and is comfortable when riding. Don't forget some good pants. They'll help protect you from injury as well. And boots and gloves, which should be specially designed for motorcycle riding. Good gear does more than just protect you in a crash. It also helps you to enjoy motorcycling more by protecting you from the weather, dehydration, and stray bits flying off the road. Also, remember to check, have you had too much to drink? The legal limit. Have you taken a drug recently, including prescription drugs? Have you had a blue with your boss, your partner, family, friends? All of these things will affect you, and so will affect your riding. If the answer's yes to any one of these, and if you do decide to ride, you're increasing your risks. Let's start with the basics of how you sit on the bike, so you have maximum control and maximum comfort. Sitting correctly will help you balance and control the bike. Feet face down and slightly out with arches pressing on the foot pegs. Backside in the rider's part of the seat, knees gripping the tank, back reasonably straight, shoulders and arms relaxed, elbows in and slightly bent, and wrists down. Sitting correctly will have your head in a position to see what's ahead and around you. Each control on your bike must be easy to reach with hand or foot. If not, they'll need to be adjusted. That's better. It's important to adjust your mirrors. Position them so you're able to see the following traffic and the outer part of your body or bike. Make sure your head is up and eyes looking ahead. This is what you see when looking ahead, and this is what you see through the mirrors. In order to see the areas which are not coloured, you need to make a head check, a look over the shoulder. You're just about ready to move off. Before you do, make a final head check. Make sure there's not a vehicle moving into the space you wish to move into. Head checks should be a habit. They need to happen even when you're not concentrating. It's 10 a.m. in the morning and the traffic is light. Let's observe this rider, looking especially at the use he makes of head checks while he's riding.
I want the right lane here, so mirror, signal, head check, changing lanes. Light's been green a while, could change. Up on the best part of the road, I'll set up, ready to stop if I have to. No, safe to go through. Got a vehicle following pretty close behind me. Just keeping an eye on it, slowing down. It's braking very close behind me. I'll brake it down gently, keep myself a little bit of space in front for an escape route. Lights are now green, okay to continue. Just a head check there to make sure there's no bikes or anything coming up through the inside, and away we go. I need to change lanes down here, so it's going to be mirror, signal, head check, do a lane change, reposition the bike and cancel the indicator. Got a vehicle right driving in my blind spot at present. Just check over the shoulder and keep an eye on it. Need to do a lane change here, so mirror, signal, check over the shoulder, readjust position, cancel the indicator. Watching that heavy vehicle closely coming in behind, I'm going to reposition the bike. Just head check there to keep an eye on that, giving myself plenty of room. Vehicle on the left, mirror, head check, reposition the bike, making sure that driver's going to stop. Yep, okay, continue through.
One of the most difficult parts about cornering is eye direction. Instead of looking down at the ground in front of the motorcycle, which is just an automatic reaction, you want to do that, you have to try and look further ahead of the motorcycle where you want the bike to go.
Notice that when the rider wants to go left, he looks left. And then right when he wants to go right. The use of the eyes to look at where you want to go has a direct relationship with the handlebars. The same principle applies to obstacles in your path, like objects or potholes. If you notice an approaching object, don't allow your eyes to stay on it, or you might hit it. Register its position in your mind, then look in the direction you wish to go. Your head movements are critical also when cornering. Notice that as this rider gets into the curve, his body is leaning into it. His head is upright and his line of sight through the turn is level with the road. It's fairly common for inexperienced riders to drop their bikes in low-speed braking situations, such as driveways, petrol stations, shopping centres and car parks. This can lead to injuries like strained backs and broken ankles. It's also really embarrassing and can cause expensive damage to your bike. If you're off your bike and need to brake, you'll have to use the front brake, but make the front wheel straight ahead. A common fault when riding at walking speeds or very low speeds is to use the front brake harshly when the handlebars are turned. This causes the bike to drop forward and will probably topple it. Look at this rider's method and see if you can work out what he's doing right. He's keeping the bike upright with handlebars straight ahead. He's braking straight and braking gently. He's using the rear brake to slow down, allowing him to keep control and balance, because at walking speed he doesn't need the force of the front brake. Low speed turning is not as easy as it might seem. The thing to remember is the slower you go, the more you have to compensate for the weight of the bike. Notice how the rider is looking in the direction he wants to go. He's turning the bike by leaning out of the turn, using the back brake exclusively. He may also have to work the clutch to prevent stalling. We've learned how to control the bike at very low speeds to avoid harm. Now let's look at the bike control skills you'll need at higher speeds to avoid harm. There are two main skills you'll need. The skill to stop the bike before a hazard, which is usually the safer option, and the skill for moving around a hazard, which may be your only way out if you fail to anticipate the hazard. We'll look at what you have to do to move around something first. Later we'll see how you can avoid situations like this altogether. Say these cones are a hazard, like the car pulling out, and you haven't given yourself room to stop safely. We'll play that again and look at the technique he used. There are two main parts to it, looking and pushing. Look where you want to go and push the handlebar on the side you want to go. Your other hand can pull. When you push the handlebar, this momentarily steers the bike off your intended course, forcing the bike to lean in the direction you want to go. So if you want to go to the right, you look right, push right, and go right. If you want to go to the left, you look left, push left, and go left. Once the swerve has started, relax the push and steer straight. If you want to go to the right and then to the left, you guessed it, push right, push left. Push gently and you'll move away gently. Push quickly and you'll move away quickly, providing you have good tyre grip. On a slippery surface, you wouldn't be able to do this. With practice, you can get quite good. You'll learn to make it a smooth action by pivoting at the hips and keeping your weight on the pegs to assist control. But this is on a training range. It's not quite as easy on the road. This rider was relying as much on luck as skill to avoid a crash. If the car had moved a fraction later, it would have been a different story. Let's look at how a good rider applies the brakes while on the road. Swerving to avoid harm is an option, but not one we can rely on. You should plan to have room to stop. This rider was ready for the turning car and used his brakes well. But what if he hadn't been ready? Chances are he would have frozen up and not braked at all, or grabbed and locked the brakes. These are the most common surprise reactions. This sort of braking would probably have ended in a crash.
A car did pull out in front of me, but if I had have responded well, it wouldn't have been an issue at all, whereas I responded badly and panicked and grabbed the front brake and actually fell off the motorcycle and didn't even get anywhere near the car. But I suppose that was the first time that I realised that cars could actually turn in front of you, and that was a little bit scary.
Before we go to good braking, we'll look at what you should do if you skid. If you lock the front wheel, release the brake immediately. Then reapply the brakes smoothly. Lock the rear wheel, steer the bike straight if it's out of line, and then release the brake pressure. In any kind of skid, keep both feet up on the foot pegs. This may take a bit of willpower, but it will give you the best control. Once more. Front wheel, release the brake immediately and reapply gently. Rear wheel, bike in line, release the brake and reapply gently. Good riders rarely put themselves in emergency situations. They try to anticipate trouble and they know how to brake well.
Understanding braking is essential on a motorcycle. It's probably one of the, I think, one of the most important things.
To understand the best method for braking, let's first look at the effect braking has on a bike. As we brake, the weight of the bike starts to move from both wheels to mostly the front wheel. The harder the bike stops, the more weight transfers to the front. When the weight transfers progressively, it lets the front tyre grip the road more. The tyre has a bigger footprint on the road. At the same time, rear tyre grip is reduced. To stop quickly, you need good grip. Because of this, there's a limit to the amount of work the rear brake can do. In good conditions, the front brake provides nearly all your stopping power. We'll look at a braking demonstration. The rider on the right is only using the back brake. The rider in the middle is using the front brake only, and the rider on the left is using both brakes together. Notice how the rider using the back brake alone takes by far the longest distance to stop. The rider using both brakes together stops in the shortest space. Using both brakes together is clearly the most effective way to stop. Now let's look at the two parts of good braking, set up and squeeze. The first part, setting up, prepares you and the bike for braking. Apply the front brake and back brake levers just until the brakes start to work. This stage takes all the slack out of the braking and suspension systems, and as we've seen, gently delivers more weight onto the front tyre, giving it more grip. Also, your brake light is on, telling the person behind you may be going to stop. Your bike is set up to brake hard. Now comes the second part of good braking, the squeeze. Progressively squeeze the brake levers, gently at first, then gradually harder and harder to stop the bike. The front and rear brakes work powerfully together to slow the bike safely. We'll look at the parts one more time. Set up, then squeeze. Good riders will brake like this every time they brake, so good braking becomes a habit. Good braking habits will help you in an emergency. Now let's look at how a good rider applies the brakes while on the road.
Whenever I ride a bike, I always check the brakes out first. Each bike's just so different. I need to know how much slack's in the levers and how well each brake works. Every time I brake, I'm going to set up and squeeze. Sign indicates roundabout ahead. I can see the roundabout now. There's a pedestrian crossing there, a lot of white markings on the road. I'm going to do my best to avoid them. Turning right, mirror signal, set the brakes up early, squeezing gently. Checking my view to the right, got vehicles coming in through there, just wait for them. The front brake's a stopping brake, but on some surfaces you've got to use it really gently. Gravel road ahead, set up, squeeze firm on the bitumen, ease off and reapply gently. There's less grip. Also helps moving onto gravel to keep the weight on the pegs and ease out of the seat. That helps with bike control. It's the same in the wet. You've got to be real gentle on the brakes. You can't squeeze either brake as hard. Set up long before you normally would to get the brakes working. And squeeze gently. It'll take you more room to stop. Set up, squeeze, and stop. On really slippery surfaces, there's no braking at all because there's almost no grip. I'll keep the bike upright, weight on the pegs, and use gentle acceleration. For curves, do your braking before entering the turn. Set up, squeeze. Off brakes. You can't brake firmly on this angle because tyre grip's being used up for cornering. If you make a mistake and have to brake firmly, bike upright and squeeze. See the dangerous position that's put me in. That's why it's so important to brake to a safe speed before entering the corner.
On a bike, braking is your main survival method. Good braking, set up and squeeze is not a natural instinct. It's a bike skill that has to be learned, then practiced over and over, even when you think you may have mastered it. Braking is a vital part of the total riding package.
So now you're up and moving. Remember the basics. Head checks. Cover your blind spots and keep your head moving all the time. Changing directions. Look there, go there. And braking. Set up and squeeze smoothly, using mostly the front brake.